right, let's start. Please put your hands in front of the heart. And bow. Nice to see you again today. Very good, very good. And yesterday I wrote about the Dhamma, and I gave this quote from the Buddha who addressed the monk, and he said, "Good bhikkhus, so you have been guided by me with this Dhamma, which is visible here and now, immediately effective, inviting inspection, onward leading, to be experienced by the wise for themselves." For it was with reference to this that it has been said, and so on. But what I want to say is that the color setting are so strange today. It looks like I don't know what's going on. It's look, my lips are so dark. This is what I see today. Really strange, pale figure. That's strange. I don't know. Let's do it like this. So the Dhamma. And what the Buddha says is that the Dhamma, which is normally the Buddha's teachings, is actually visible here and now, right? Immediately effective. That means that if you apply the teaching, then you will have results right away. Inviting inspection. That means that you just not have blind belief in the teachings, right? It's not blind faith. You have to inspect it for yourself, to be experienced by the wise for themselves. So the teachings are given, the explanations, then you sit in meditation or you contemplate for yourself, and then somehow the Dhamma becomes yours. You experience the Dhamma for yourself, you understand the Buddha's teachings, right? So when you say, so I hope, really hope, that I'm not teaching Buddhism to you. I hope that you are practicing the Buddha's teachings and you inspect for yourself, right? So it's not a list of items that you remember and that's it. Of course, there is a process of understanding of hearing the teachings and understanding them or not, and say, okay, I should have a look by myself. But this is important to know, that you do not depend on the teacher. Maybe okay to have but you cannot say, don't come on Sundays, just read the Pali Canon for yourself, sit in meditation and check for yourself what has been said. Maybe you can do that. You can do that as well. But very important that it's not intellectual knowledge. Today I would like to talk about consciousness, and this is in the continuity of last Dharma talk about contemplation of death. And I will base this class on a sutta, which can be found in the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle length discourses of the Buddha, and this is the sutta number 38. And it's called the Greater Discourse on the Destruction of Craving. So I thought a lot about craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, and craving for non-existence, and has a source as the origin of suffering. And when there is cessation of craving, there is cessation of suffering. And here it's the discourse on the destruction of craving. So what is the link between that and consciousness? Well, there was once a bhikkhu who was called Sati, and was the fisherman's son, and he had a pernicious view, meaning wrong view. And there was so a bhikkhu inside the sangha, and other bhikkhu starting to question him. Is that true, friend, that you have such a pernicious view? So what was his view? Sati said, as I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, meaning the teacher, meaning the Buddha, it is the same consciousness that runs and wanders through the round of rebirth, not another. So in other words, Sati, the bhikkhu, thinks that there is a persistent consciousness which transmigrate from one existence to another one. And this is this persistent consciousness which is necessary to explain rebirth. So I hope that at this point you already know why it's a pernicious view. If not, well, then I have to explain again. So the bhikkhu inquires, is that true, Sadi, friend Sadi, that such a pernicious view has arisen in you? And Sati said, exactly, friends. It is the same consciousness that runs and wanders through the rounds of rebirth, not another. Right, so the bhikkhu said, maybe we should try to tell him that the Buddha didn't taught that at all, that he taught something else, and they tried to make him change his mind. And they say, well, friend Sati, do not say so. Do not misrepresent the Blessed One. It is not good to misrepresent the Blessed One. Okay. The Blessed One will not speak thus. For in many ways, the Blessed One has stated consciousness to be dependently arisen, since without a condition, there is no origination of consciousness. All right. So the bhikkhu says, okay, this is your view. This, the Buddha didn't teach. The Buddha taught that. And so they repeat that many, many times. The Buddha teach that consciousness is dependently arisen. What does it mean? So I will come to that. All right, so the bhikkhus pressed Bhikkhu Sati, they questioned, cross questions, and they didn't manage to make him change his mind. Although, so that was not the teaching of the Buddha. So there was a bhikkhu inside the Sangha who had a view that the Buddha didn't taught, and yet the bhikkhu thought that the bhikkhu Sati said, yes, this is what the Buddha said. So as everything was said orally and transmitted orally, that was quite not good for the Sangha, that someone would actually would teach and say, okay, yeah, the Buddha taught that. So after a while, they decided to inform the Buddha about it. And the Buddha asked the bhikkhus to say to Bhikkhu Sadi to come to meet with him. All right, so the Buddha asked Sadi, is it true that the following pernicious view has arisen in you? And he repeat the view, what the bhikkhus told the Buddha. The view is, again he repeats, as I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, it is the same consciousness that runs and wanders through the round of rebirth, not another. It said he is very convinced about what he understood. So he said, yes, exactly so, Venerable Sir. This is how I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One. Oh, no. No. So the Buddha asked, what is that consciousness, Sadi? And so the Sadi elaborates his view. It's a view of self, actually. And he said, Venerable Sir, it is that which speaks and feels and experiences here and there the results of good and bad actions. So he explained his view. No. So, and this is the very first time in the Pali Canon when where I see that the Buddha, something that is close to um, being upset. So the Buddha cannot be upset. He's an arrant, fully enlightened one. But this is very close. So this he has to say. He has to be strong, all right, and to say, don't say that. So he said, misguided man, to whom have you ever known me to teach the Dhamma that way, in that way? Misguided man, have I not stated in many ways consciousness to be dependently arisen, since without the conditions there is no origination of consciousness? But you, misguided man, have misrepresented us by your wrong grasp and injured yourself and stored up much demerit. For this will lead to your harm and suffering for a long time. So not only does he say that, okay, the Buddha states what he teaches, and he said not only that, but that the fact to misrepresent the Buddha's teachings brings lots of demerit to the one who doesn't want to change his view. And he said that, of course, Bhikkhu Sadi brought lots of harm to himself. And then the Buddha say, okay, one bhikkhu is thinking like this. Are the other bhikkhu also thinking like this? What are the views of the other bhikkhu? Because then he would have to, of course, adjust and repeat his teachings. So he questions the other bhikkhus and realize that yes, the bhikkhus have understood well the Buddha's teachings. And they repeat that, yes, in many discourses, the Blessed One has stated that consciousness is dependently arisen, since without the conditions, there is no origination of consciousness. And there is a long part about the conditionality of consciousness, and this is what I said several times. So I told you that, for example, for eye consciousness to arise, you need the eye, so the organ, you need a form, and it will lead to I consciousness. If you hear a sound, so sound, there is the ear, it will lead to hear consciousness. So when consciousness arises dependent on the I and on a form, it is recognized as I consciousness. Okay? And the Buddha says again, when consciousness arises dependent on the ear and sounds, it is reckoned as ear consciousness. Right? And so for the mind as well, mind objects, mind consciousness. And I consciousness is not the same as here consciousness. So there is no migration of consciousness from one door to the next. So it's really dependent on the six senses. So this is the conditionality of consciousness, and he gives a simile, which is that, well, for example, when he said that, for example, if you start a fire from logs of wood, for example, then it's recognized a log fire. If you use a cow dung as to start as a fuel for the fire, then it's not the same as the fire which burns dependent on logs and so on. He gives several simile. So I consciousness is not the same as here consciousness or as mind consciousness. All right. In your own practice, you have to look at these different sense organs and to look for yourself when I consciousness comes. Right? When you hear sound, when you see something, when you think about something, when you start to see the different areas coming and going. And he also expounds the nutriment independent origination. He said that there are 4 kinds of nutriment for the maintenance of beings that have already come to be and for the support of those about to come to be. And they say that there are 4 nutriments for being. One is physical food as nutriment, contact as the second, mental volition as the third, and consciousness as the fourth. And he expound again this dependent origination. He said that because these 4 kinds of nutriment have what as their source, what as their origin, from what are they born and produced? And this is where craving is introduced. These 4 kinds of nutriments have craving as their source, craving as their origin. They are born and produced from craving. And then he goes towards the list of dependent origination. So what I invite you to say, I know that it's very difficult to follow what I'm saying, especially if it's not your mother tongue, and because there is this list of dependent origination of 12 links. So I invite you to read for yourself the sutta, okay? And take some times and all right, say, okay, I don't understand, but one has to see that there is dependency. and that when one factors or one dependence are inside the chain, when let's say something is broken, something no longer arises, then the chain ceases. So he say, okay, and this craving as what as its source? Craving as feeling as its source. And this feeling has what as its source? Feeling as contact as its source. And this contact, what is its source? Contact as the sixfold base as its source. And the sixfold base as mentality, materiality as its source. And mentality, materiality as consciousness as its source. And consciousness as formations as its source. And these formations have ignorance as their source, ignorance as their origin, and they are born and produced from ignorance. Ignorance usually is the not knowing the Four Noble Truths. So he expounded the dependent origination, and afterward he explains again. So a lot in different sequence. So the forward exposition on arising. So he would say, with ignorance as condition, formations comes to be. With formations as condition, consciousness. With consciousness as condition, mentality, materiality. With mentality, materiality as condition, the sixfold base. So that means the six senses. With a sixfold base as condition, then contact. With contact as condition, feeling. With feeling as condition, craving. With craving as condition, clinging. With clinging as condition, being. With being as condition, birth. With birth as condition, aging and death. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair comes to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. So this is a key teaching, because this is the origin of this whole mass of suffering, meaning the second noble truth. All right. And he also expound the reverse order on arising. So I won't go through it, then recapitulate, but in shorter way. And this is the statement of the abstract formula of dependent origination. This is what you will come to see in many teachings. And this is the Buddha who says that this is what I say, that when this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. So they dependently arisen. And then he reformulates again with the 12th link of dependent origination. And what is interesting for us, actually, is the forward exposition on cessation. So if they arise together, that means if one doesn't arise, then the other one doesn't come to be. All right. If one fades away, then the other one also fades away. And this is a key point also to understand the cessation of suffering. So we say that with the relentless fading away and cessation of ignorance comes cessation of formations. With the cessation of formations, cessation of consciousness. With the cessation of consciousness, cessation of mentality, materiality. With the cessation of mentality, materiality, cessation of the sixfold base. With the cessation of the sixfold base, cessation of contact. With the cessation of contact, cessation of feeling. With the cessation of feeling, cessation of craving. With the cessation of craving, cessation of clinging, grasping. With the cessation of clinging, cessation of being. With the cessation of being, cessation of birth. And with the cessation of birth, aging and death. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. So this is the third noble truth. And again, he expounds the reverse order questionnaire on cessation. And again, to really sum this up, according to the cessation point of view, he say, when this not exist, that doesn't come to be. With the cessation of this, that ceases. And then he expounds again, with the cessation of ignorance comes the cessation of formations. And he goes through the 12 links. And when you have pondered that, do the practice, the sitting practice, inside practice, then you see for yourself this dependent origination. And he asked the bhikkhus, he said, knowing and seeing in this way, so knowing not only intellectual knowledge, but also understanding through sitting practice, would you run back to the past thus and ask questions such as, where were we in the past? Were we not in the past? What were we in the past? Who were we in the past? And so on. And for the future, you don't ask questions either, questions like that, because you understand this dependent origination. And another part that I also gave once in a class, during a class, is he explains, so based on this dependent origination, how the continuation of the rounds of rebirths occurs. So this process has to be understood, right? So otherwise, how can you understand how to end the round of rebirths? So he explains what it is for a normal human being, what is a normal experience, and how this experience with ignorance propels the round of the continuation of the round. And he says, on seeing a form with the eye, he lusts after it if it is pleasing. He dislikes it if it is unpleasing. He abides with mindfulness of the body unestablished, meaning no mindfulness, with a limited mind. And he doesn't understand as it actually is the deliverance of mind and deliverance by wisdom, wherein those evil, unwholesome states cease without remainder. That means that the man has ignorance. So that human being, engaged as he is in favoring and opposing whatever feeling he feels, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, he delights in that feeling, welcomes it, and remains holding to it. As he does so, delight arises in him. Now, delight in feeling is clinging. With his clinging as condition, being comes to be. With being as condition, birth. With birth as condition, aging and death. sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. And he expounds the same. So here he said for how through the eye, the form, there is eye consciousness, there is contact. From contact, there is this feeling, all right? And lust and delight in feelings leads to craving, clinging, and so on, the entire dependent origination, right? So this was just for the eye, but you have the same for the sound. For the sound, on hearing a sound, on smelling an odor, and also on cognizing a mind object with the mind. He lusts after it if it is pleasing. He dislikes it if it is unpleasing. Now delight in feelings is clinging. So with ignorance, this is how a normal experiencer, I would say, would actually continue the round of being. And the ending of the round, or the cessation, or the fourth noble truth, how do I end this round? Then this is the gradual training, the threefold training, right? That we are very lucky that a Buddha rose 2,500 years ago to expound this Dhamma and to let us know about how to end this whole mass of suffering, all right? So the gradual training, and I don't know why in that sutta, it's just about well, he describes the right concentration, so the jhanas. And he explains the full cessation. Once you've been trained, you've trained your mind, you've trained the discipline, then you end the round full cessation. How do you do that? On seeing a form with the eye, it does not lust after it if it is pleasing. It does not dislike it if it is unpleasing. He abides with mindfulness of the body established, with an immeasurable mind, and he understands as it actually is the deliverance of mind and the deliverance by wisdom, wherein those evil, unwholesome states cease without remainder. So, having thus abandoned favoring and opposing, whatever feeling he feels, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, so this is the three kinds of Vedana feeling tone that I talked about already. He does not delight in that feeling, welcome it, or remain holding to it. So, in a sense, the chain of dependent origination is broken at the link between feeling and craving. And this is Bhikkhu Bodhi who says that feeling arises due to the maturation of past karma. However, if one does not delight in feeling, craving will not arise. Instead of reactions of like and dislike that provide further fuel for the round, and thus the rounds come to an end. So this is why also when we do together some mindfulness practice, I also encourage you to be aware of the feelings, the three kinds of feelings. All right, there is contemplation of Vedana, which is one of the four foundation of mindfulness. So you have to know when you see a form, the arising of the feeling. You train yourself. You're even Sunday afternoon, nothing to do, right? It's quite common. Say, okay, let's sing. So you can span your sight over objects in the room. And look at and try to notice the Vedana, or trying to remember when you saw something that you found extraordinary. And say, okay, I want it. There's this movement forward. Oh, that's so beautiful. Just driving in a street where, I don't know, there are very beautiful houses or very beautiful garden. And you say, oh yeah, even beautiful flowers. Wow, attraction to the beautiful. Yeah, let's pick those flowers and bring them home. And then you understand what is delight and what is holding. So train yourself to feel the feeling, because then you will understand when you have an experience. Okay, I I'm feeling this very painful, and this is where you have the time, because you are very aware of that. For example, it can be a very painful feeling. That's the moment where you have the chance to actually stop, or let's say cut the chain of reactivity. And for those who actually want to train and the round of rebirth, then they have to know that with the cessation of this delight comes the cessation of clinging. With the cessation of clinging, cessation of being. With the cessation of being, cessation of birth. With the cessation of birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. All right, and this is the destruction of craving. He gives the way. Say, okay, look at this feeling. And when you feel this painful feeling, then you do not say, okay, painful. You feel the feeling, right? You pause, you reflect. Okay, you say where it is. You can also reflect a little bit. Okay, this is because I've heard a painful sound, a sound which was very intense, or because I don't know, I was burned on the skin or something like this. He explained how to stop the chain of reactivity and how to stop the nutriments, the fuel, the seed for future rebirth. And also, if you are not interested in ending suffering, but just in your daily life, how to adjust, how to stop this chain of automation of reactivity, then you remember or you feel the feeling, oh yes, painful, oh yes, very, very, very good feeling, and oh, let's enjoy it, let's keep it. And at the end, the Buddha addressed the bhikkhu, and he has very strong words against sati. He said, bhikkhus, remember this discourse of mine briefly as deliverance in the destruction of craving, but remember the bhikkhu sati as caught up in a vast net of craving, in the trammel of craving. So, meaning that if Sadi had this view of a persistent consciousness, it was the origin of that was a craving for existence, okay, wanting to be kind of eternal. This the Buddha didn't teach, right? This is what that was the point of of today's class. He hasn't said that there is no permanent consciousness. All right, there is no everlasting consciousness. Consciousness is dependently arisen, right? And it's very clear, and when you repeatedly say that. Also, you can find exposition around the 5 aggregates of clinging, right? That let's say that a being, as a model, a being is actually a kind of lump of foam made of 5 different constituents, which are the consciousness aggregate, the form aggregate, perception aggregate, the mental formations aggregate, and the feeling aggregate, right? And you see that the feeling aggregate, so this Vedana, is very important. And he said we have to look at consciousness aggregate as, is it permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, it comes and goes. So sometimes you have a form, you see a form, then I consciousness arises, mind consciousness arises, and then so on. And if you do insight practice, you see those consciousness come and go, come and go, come and go, arise and pass away, right? The body, is it permanent or impermanent? Of course, well, I say of course, but this is something we do not contemplate often. But yes, we say that we have a new body every 7 years because cells just they die and they are created again from food, from oxygen, and from anything that we put into the body. And your air fall down and so on. So from one moment to the next, you do not have the same body. If you would look with a microscope on different cells, then even if you end seems to have the kind of constant shape, well, you would look that, all right, the constituents are actually never not lasting, right? All from mental formations, sankaras, everything that you have, all your volitional formations, so all your intentions, they change and go from one day to the next, depending on what you want or what you do not want, right? Impermanent. Perceptions, okay, they are changing all the time. So sometimes you perceive color, then you perceive an object, you give it a name. Changes all the time. Feeling, of course, it's an alternation of painful feeling, pleasant feeling, neither painful nor pleasant feeling, changing all the time. So there is nothing permanent at all in a being. All right, although it looks like there is a core, it looks like that being, although all of these things that makes the experience are impermanent, they rise and goes away, dependent on conditions. There is something in that process that makes any way feel like there is solidity in that being, that I am me, right? And this what makes it, fabricates it as a me having an experience is actually ignorance. All right, that was today's talk. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask right now. And if you do not have any questions, then you can just feel free to leave whenever you need. So I just tell again that it comes from Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 38, and that I encourage you for yourself to spend some time reading the suttas, because the better to read the Buddha's words than to listen to mine.
I have a question.
I'm listening. Yes.
What page was it?
If you so the page for the book, it's if you have it, it's 349. 349. You were asking the page for the sutta.
Yeah.
Do you have the book?
Yes.
Okay, so it's number 38. So it's page 349.
349.
Yes,
Okay.
and what I encourage you is actually there are many notes, all right, for these suttas, and I encourage you to read them, because it's insight most of the time from Bhikkhu Bodhi, who actually reformulates what is said, or he gives a little bit more explanation of what he said, because you've noticed that how it's written is quite I don't know how to explain that in English, but it's very special kind of language, not the kind of language that we would use nowadays, right? So there are extra explanations. And and Bhikkhu Bodhi is very good in language, so it gives very precise and adjectives and so on, so that you can understand.
Thank you.
It's a very important discourse. I didn't ring the bell, so we can do it now. I will ring the bell 3 times and we will bow. Please bow.
Thank you for today's.
You're welcome. Thank you for your presence.